What's up, everybody? Welcome into one of our favorite shows of the year, the first OTAs practice, which means we're slowly making our way towards training camp. We got a chance to go out to practice today. We're going to dive into all of my observations right here on Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. He's Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. Fresh little sunburn that is so... It feels great this time of year, Ryan, because it feels like football is back in the air.
It certainly does. And, somewhat football related. My daughter was at the Micah Hyde softball game. And I guess pretty much everyone that went to that, too, got pretty well torched. So tis the season, football activities, all about it.
I saw Ellie. Did you know that?
Yeah, she told me.
I saw her walking out. I meant to text you about it, but just, kind of slipped my mind, to be honest with you. We've had a lot on our plate. Plus, you've been really busy. You've been doing a lot of different things, like coming up with your next dart joke, which, by the way, was very popular on the show. I heard a couple reviews on that. People thought it was great.
Love it. I'm glad to hear it. Excited to talk some football today.
All right, let's get into it. So, first and foremost, where do you want to start? I'll give you the keys. Take it out first.
You know what? Let's start with one of the new wide receiver additions, Chase Claypool.
He made what I would call 1A or 1B in terms of the play of the days offensively. And it came from Mitchell Trubisky in 11-on-11 drills. Trubisky saw him kind of breaking open. He was coverage against Jamarcus Ingram. And it was like, whoa, this is going to be fun. Right. And I was sitting there right on that sideline. It was a 50-50 ball. First of all, the hops, the size, the athleticism for Claypool, not to get everybody too jacked up here, as good as advertised, right? Like, this is what people got excited about back in 2020, back when he was at Notre Dame. We're going to talk about some of the things that he said in a minute, but making a good first impression to me was something that he had to come out and do. And he's done it in more ways than one, but on the field, he goes out there, he makes a big play. I thought Mitchell Trubisky looked great today. He puts the ball up. Claypool gets on the ladder, goes to the top rung, makes this catch, comes down with the catch inbounds. They're not in pads, so let's not overreact here. They can't be physical. But in terms of a first impression, I think Claypool made another reception during the individual drills. He's got work to do, though, Ryan. Like, I went back and listened to Josh Allen real quick. He was asked about the wide receiver room, and he ran through everything. He talked about MVS, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir. He talked about Curtis Samuel. He talked about Mac Hollins, who he didn't mention by name, Chase Claypool. So I feel like Claypool still has some work to do to kind of build a rapport with Josh Allen over the course of the spring and the summer, which all these guys do, not named Khalil Shakir. But it was a good first step, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that he said today.
Yeah, making a good first impression on the field, making a big catch using his size. The Bills have seemed to make a little bit of a shift in terms of some receivers and the size that they're looking for in free agency this year and in the draft, obviously, with Keon Coleman. So that's where Chase Claypool can kind of fit in. So making a big catch here is good for him. But he's also impressing Sean McDermott. McDermott talking about his approach and his mindset and what he's seen from him thus far. So it's a good first impression. This is nothing about like a last chance for him. This is him trying to reestablish himself for sure. But it's also about some of the things that he said today, which I'm going to let you get into here, Matt.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting. He pulled the curtain back a little bit into his offseason and like the ideology behind signing with the Bills when he did sign with the Bills. So apparently there was interest on both sides before the draft. But the Bills came to Claypool's team and said, listen, we don't know how the draft's going to play out. Brandon Beane could have taken 2 wide receivers, right? And all of a sudden, that opportunity that might have been there before the draft wasn't as prevalent. The Bills get out. They take 10 players, only 1 wide receiver, check back in with Claypool's team. And this was even before the MVS signing, and said, hey, come to Buffalo. What do you want to be? Do you want an opportunity with a good type of fit? And he said, I'm all in. He wants to play special teams. He wants to play wide receiver. He wants to do whatever the Bills want him to do. And you mentioned it, like, I thought it was interesting that Sean McDermott already spoke to his character. He made it a point to say that he's of high character after getting to know him over the last couple of weeks. Claypool said the first thing he's felt since arriving in Buffalo is like the family-oriented style of the team. Sean McDermott twice a week brings a new player up about I see a text from my wife I say, don't text me or message me during the game. You throw me off my game. Every 2 times a week, new players have to go up in front of the team and introduce themselves, tell themselves a little bit about about their story. Claypool hasn't gone yet, but he's looking forward to that, and it's made him feel more at home. He's happy about playing in a blue collar town. He wants to showcase his work ethic, and he's not concerned about some of the things that have been said about him. He's more concerned about doing the right things inside the Bills building and making people that have shown that they believe in him, guys like Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, bringing him to Buffalo, that he was worth that investment. I thought it was all really good stuff today.
Yeah, I agree. Everything that I've watched on him from today, all positive. And listen, the Bills put out feelers to players pre-draft a lot where they say, let's wait and see. They did it with Poona Ford the year before this. So it's very common. And Chase Claypool getting this opportunity in Buffalo, it's big for him because this is an elite quarterback that he could potentially play with. He just needs to stack the days in terms of the practices, make a few big plays here and there like he did today. And once the pads come on, it matters that much more. Go into the locker room, build that rapport with the guys, that family atmosphere. He's doing everything right thus far. I anticipate more of the same over the summer. It's just a crowded locker room right now in terms of the wide receiver position. There's only so many spots, and he'll have to earn his keep, not just as a receiver, but potentially on special teams as well.
Let's move over to another wide receiver, rookie Keon Coleman, his first day with Josh Allen, which I know a lot of people were excited about this one. He made a couple of really nice catches. They went to him right out of the gates in 11 on 11. I think he was in the vicinity of Kaiir Elam, but I don't know what kind of coverage they were playing, nor could I tell you if I knew. So it's hard to say if it was Coleman versus Elam, but he makes a nice catch. Nothing crazy. Maybe 7-8 yard catch with a little bit of room to run. But Josh Allen getting the rookie involved very early. A couple plays later, miscommunication, or this might have been in the second 11 on 11 drill. Miscommunication between Allen and Coleman went the wrong way on a route. Immediately after the play, Coleman put his hand up as to say, okay, I made a mistake here. That was on me. I don't think it's a big deal though, Ryan. Like that's what this time of year is for. Keon Coleman still kind of coming to grips with this offense. And I feel like, there's going to be a lot of those moments, like learning moments where they can get back on the tape after practice, go through what went right, what went wrong. And that's part of the process. The play of the game day, which I will say is either 1A to 1B to Claypool, which I mentioned earlier. Coleman went up. He was one-on-one in coverage with Christian Benford, 50-50 ball. Allen rifled in a really nice pass to him, and he goes up and he shows the athleticism, getting up off the ground, catches the ball, great sticky hands. It's the kind of stuff that, at his best, Gabe Davis did at his best. Like you think back to some of the sideline catches that Davis has made over the course of his career, being athletic, showing great footwork. It wasn't really the footwork in this spot, but a big play on the sideline. Quarterback puts it up. You make a play. Thought it was a really nice day one for Keon Coleman.
And Coleman's going to have opportunities to do that all over the field, but I think fans should be really excited about him in the red zone potentially this season, where Allen might have to scramble around and keep plays alive. When you have a target like Keon Coleman who can climb the ladder, go up and get the ball, that's where a lot of those touchdown opportunities are going to come for him this year. As for the miscue or the miscommunication, like you said, there's absolutely nothing to that. Not a big deal. This is a rookie, some of his first reps with Josh Allen. If this was a player that was a seasoned vet that had been here for a few years, then I'd be a little concerned that you'd be running the routes wrong. But it's going to happen. There's going to be some growing pains for a lot of these rookies, not just Coleman throughout the summer, and that's to be expected.
Seeing Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Josh Allen kind of interact today, you could tell like it feels like there's this race to be buddies with Josh Allen in the wide receiver room. And isn't that fitting coming off of, the way that things played out with Stephon Diggs? I actually heard a caller on WGR. Wish I would have gotten his name and I could have given him a little love, a little shout out. He called in today. I think it was the morning show, maybe the afternoon show. I can't remember what. But, he was talking about like the Stephon Diggs situation and maybe it being less about like conflict, like real conflict between Allen and Diggs, but maybe just more like the relationship had run its course. Like it was almost like this was the next iteration of what this offense needs to be without like a bona fide number one wide receiver. We talked about this a little bit on the show over the last couple of months. But I thought it was a really good point because he said he went back and watched the Chiefs game. And after one of the plays, I think it was the third down where Allen kind of forced it to Khalil Shakir. It was Stephon Diggs kind of coming off, and it looked like he was kind of open if Allen would have went in his direction. And maybe that's where he kind of wanted off the ride, right? Like where he was like, I throw my hands up, like this is just going to be this offense isn't predicated around me. And maybe from a Bills perspective, it shouldn't be. And now it's like you have all of these guys vying for, the affections of their quarterback and like a spot in the mix of what this thing's going to be.
Yeah, and when it comes to, MVS specifically, he signed with the Bills because of hanging out with Josh Allen and talking today about how Josh Allen is just a normal guy, which you don't always see from these quarterbacks making huge money or superstar athletes. So Allen, in terms of his personality, I think that appeals to a lot of these wide receivers. As for the approach that the Bills have taken this offseason, moving on from Stephon Diggs, bringing in Keon Coleman, MVS, Claypool, and the list goes on and on. It's an approach that we've seen the last few years by teams. It was the Chiefs' approach last year. You don't need the superstar player. You just bring in a lot of other players. It's kind of what the Packers have done. The Packers don't necessarily have a superstar, but they have some pretty solid receivers. They have some really solid pass catchers. And the Bills have that in some of their receivers, their running backs, their tight ends, and that list goes on.
One final thing on Claypool that I want to put an exclamation point on this thing. And it goes back to kind of what I was talking about. And I even had a little bit of it wasn't even a back and forth. Like, Nate Geary quote tweeted, I think one of our clips from our show. And basically I should bring him on and we could talk about it, but he's totally out on Claypool. And I get it. Like he was a Notre Dame guy, kind of came out, whatever the rub is on him, it's rubbed a lot of Notre Dame fans the wrong way. And so I think today was a great example of why sometimes it's better to take a step back and not overreact to some of the stuff that you read online. Like Claypool seemed like a super engaging, super nice guy. And it's a first impression. And I'm sure he's kind of putting out the best first impression that he can, knowing how few and far between the opportunities might be if this doesn't go well. But I think if you're a team like the Bills that have a need at the position with so much turnover, I think you want as many of these kinds of darts as you can find, because it's one of those things that if it works out, the high-end talent, like Sean McDermott said, is there. And the guy himself, it's like, what do we love more than anything in this country? Like a comeback story, right? Like somebody that figures it out. I'm a perfect example of it. Not to get too personal, I dropped out of high school. There were people that told me that, and maybe that's why I have a little bit of a soft spot for Claypool, because I've been told before that I wasn't going to make anything of my life. And I'm sure he's hearing a lot of that. He tries to put a lot of that out of his mind. And that can be hard. But he's in a place now where he's never had this good of a quarterback. He's never been in this kind of situation, even admitted today, where it has that family environment. Maybe some guys need that. And that's one of the things that maybe we don't talk enough about Sean McDermott over the course of his time. That seems to be a very repetitive line from players that come into Buffalo, and how much McDermott cares about his players and puts them in a spot to feel like they're at home. They're part of a family.
And who knows about, Chase Claypool and what he was maybe in other spots or how he acted. Like you said, it's important to get to know the player, to get to see the player in action, see how he interacts with everyone. But at the same time, he wouldn't be the first player to come into a league, have a great rookie season, and maybe start thinking, boy, this is easier than I thought. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be on this trajectory to be a superstar in this league. And then things kind of go wrong. And I'm not saying that's what happened with him. I wasn't there in Pittsburgh, obviously covering him. Usually there's two sides to every story, and the truth is somewhere in between those two sides. So wait and see on it. But like you said, everything he said today was impressive. Everything that we've seen thus far, and mind you, it's a short sample size or a small sample size, has been on the positive side.
All right, here we go. Let's move things along here, and I got a couple more observations that we need to get into. Let's give a little bit of a health update, because I think that's important. Matt Milano, he was out at practice at the end in street clothes. He's not going to be participating still for a while, Sean McDermott said. He did leave the door open to potentially him like working in drills out at practice even before training camp. But he said it's all going to come down to the timeline. He's on schedule. Spencer Brown had off-season shoulder surgery, Sean McDermott revealed today. He did not participate in any of the team stuff. He was kind of walking through some of the individual stuff. So that's a good sign that maybe he's kind of getting to where he needs to be. No Brian Thompson. Maybe he dinged himself up last week or maybe earlier this week in practice. And there was one more. Who's the other injured?
Did you see something about Mike Edwards or anything like that? Or am I wrong on that? No.
Mike Edwards was out there, but he wasn't really participating. He was in a jersey, though. So I think that he was kind of just maybe like a vet day. I don't know. I don't want to say what exactly.
Right.
The other guy's Tommy Doyle, still working.
Tommy Doyle, there it is. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Daquan Jones, Rasul Douglas, not in attendance. Vet guys over 30, I'd imagine they'd probably pop up for one of the voluntary workouts. We'll see.
Yeah, nothing to worry about when it comes to Daquan Jones, when it comes to Rasul Douglas. As for Matt Milano, because Matt Milano is probably the one player that we get asked about the most in terms of those players coming off of injury in the insider text line. To hear he's on schedule, I think that's the best news that Bills fans can take out of this. And the sooner you get him on the practice field, the more excitement there will be. But this is not a player that needs a lot of reps, in my opinion, in terms of the defense and knowing where to be and what to do. And, you want to get him warmed up before the season starts, obviously. But as long as he's on schedule for training camp or where they want him to be, no rush in getting him out there, whether it's drills or anything else. Bills fans, Bills coaches, Bills players know exactly the type of player that Matt Milano is when he's healthy. And the fact that he is trending on schedule is some of the best news that I think this fan base should take coming out of today.
Yeah, and Sean McDermott did say Mike Edwards has a shoulder issue that he's dealing with. Brain freeze there for a second, my bad. But he was out there. He was kind of like talking to the guys. I saw him and D. Delaney, who the Bills brought in. They played together in Tampa Bay. They were kind of chatting quite a bit throughout practice and after practice. So he'll be out there probably for the majority. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like working off to the side as this thing goes along. We'll kind of follow that as we go. I want to mention a quick defensive standout. And listen, no pads. You don't want to overreact to any of the line play. But I was really impressed with Dwayne Carter today. He came off the ball really explosively, active hands. You know the Bills. They love guys at the line of scrimmage that get their hands up as rushers. He gets a pass breakup today on, I believe it was Shane Buechele at one point in practice, working against Will Clapp. And I will tell you right now, hopefully things get better for the Clapper when the pads come on, because it was not a good first impression for him today. He got beat by a couple of guys on the regular. It was a tough practice for him. I think he might have had an injury last year, so maybe he's working his way back from that. But we'll keep an eye on that. I know a lot of people had him as maybe a fringe roster guy in their 53-man projections. He's firmly off my roster projection at this point, but we'll see. You don't want to overreact to this stuff too much. Cedric Van Pran Granger, bad snap today. It was Buechele that was in over his head, kind of flew off the guy's hand. It's one snap. You don't want to overreact to it in minicamp, but something we'll keep an eye on because, at center, you're going to have to kind of get that play figured out, and you don't want to see that pop up as a consistent issue.
No, and that is really important for him. One time's not a big deal, but he has to be very consistent if he wants a chance to even contend for the starting job this year. Obviously, considering where he was drafted and the Bills' depth, I see him as a guy that's a roster lock. But I also like the talent level of this player and think that he could push for a starting job. You need to be consistent snapping the ball. So that's something to monitor, something to track. And in terms of Will Clapp or the Clapper, that made me, think of the old. Did you have one of those growing up?
I never had one. I always wanted one.
Yeah, you see the
wouldn't splurge.
I know. I thought, I always thought maybe my grandparents would get it easier sitting down, but no one had that. But Will Clapp, he's one of those fringe O-linemen.
Time out, though, before we move on. Did you ever think before you really knew what it was that you could just clap your hands and the light would go out?
Yeah.
I think I did that a couple times as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
My mom was like, what the heck are you doing? And I was
Saw
like,
it on a
did you see the video? Did you see the commercial? Come on. The clapper.
We need one of
Actually,
those.
might be a little gimmick infringement here. I know a lot of people call Sean McDermott the clapper.
That's true. A lot of clapping in Buffalo. But, he is a fringe O lineman, and we've seen this every year of Brandon Beane as GM. He brings in a ton of O linemen, a ton of D linemen, and he lets it kind of see where the dust settles after training camp. So Clapp is not someone that I would consider a lock. He still has obviously a chance to be one of those depth roster players. We've seen some guys hang on to one of the last few spots over the years, and other guys who have been traded or cut at roster cutdown time. It's to be expected for a player that was already kind of on the wasn't an impressive player in his last stint, was kind of holding on for a job there. So someone, again, to kind of watch over training camp, see if he can make the most of this opportunity in Buffalo.
Who's got a huge opportunity this year, Ryan? Dalton Kincaid. And we are going to get into him. Everybody on the Insider text line already knows all about Dalton Kincaid's day at practice because I was sending out updates from the practice field to our insiders. They got a couple of videos that I only send out to the insiders. More to come later today. And you could join the Insider text line right now, 716-528-6727, or go to joinsubtext.com/shoutbuffalobills. You get a 2-week free trial, and it's a perfect time because you're going to get the next 2 weeks of OTAs. You'll have to start paying when the mini camp starts. It's only $3.99 a month. So you'll get a really good 6-week window into what this thing looks like. So you can get on board before training camp when it's really going to heat up. All of my thoughts, takes, all of Ryan's thoughts and takes, they go right to the insiders first. Shout text lines brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give Carrie a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. Dalton Kincaid, Ryan, 2 big plays. The first from Josh Allen on an absolute bullet. A little bit over the middle. I couldn't see who was in coverage, but it was a great play. Kincaid makes kind of a play, outstretches his arms, almost falls to the ground, stays balanced. In a game, he's up and running, getting some of that valued run after the catch. Then a couple plays later, Mitch Trubisky in the game finds Dalton Kincaid, and it was almost like I was kind of freaking out a little bit. It's like, wait a second, is that 11 or 17? It looked exactly the same, like same velocity on the pass, same kind of throw. And this goes back to like what Brandon Beane's always said about Trubisky and having him as the backup quarterback. Is he Josh Allen? Of course not. But from a skill set perspective, like how he plays the position, the things that he can do, his size, the mobility, the arm strength, you like the fact that you have all of that. And it's kind of cool for the players because it's like, of course, there's a drop-off in talent when Trubisky's in, but in terms of how you're seeing the ball come in, the way he throws, the angles because of his size, it's really nice to go from Allen to Trubisky. Kincaid makes a great play. Bernard did everything he could, which, by the way, that's a good sign. Bernard fully working in team drills today to try to make a play on it. Kincaid catches it, and it's another big gainer.
And we said this at Wingnuts on Saturday. It's going to be Dalton Kincaid's season, in my opinion. I think that this is a guy that is on track for a monster year too, had a very impressive rookie season. I think the Bills are going to unlock him a little bit more this year in terms of how they use him, how they utilize him, get him down the field a little bit more. In terms of matchups, he might end up being that number one target in this passing offense. And again, I think week by week, it could be a player by player type of game, but over the course of the season, don't be surprised if Dalton Kincaid leads this team in targets and receptions, makes countless big plays for this team. He's going to be counted on a lot this year. As for Mitch Trubisky, Matt, I've always said that if your backup has to come into a meaningful game, maybe they can keep the ship steady for a few weeks. But for a practice setting, I think Mitch Trubisky is such a good addition because of all the reasons that you laid out. The velocity, the ability to move around in the pocket a little bit, to scramble, some of that athleticism. That's a little bit more than what they've had in some of the years past with some of these backups for Josh Allen, where they don't have similar skill sets. The ball doesn't come in the same. So from a practice setting, this is going to be great for some of the fringe roster guys that'll be working with the second team at training camp. It's going to be great in the practice setting throughout the year as well. If Allen needs a Veterans Day of rest, Trubisky can kind of come in here. He already knows a lot of this offense. I know he wasn't here when Joe Brady was the true, even took over as the OC, but he worked with him in the quarterback room. So there's going to be a very easy transition, in my opinion, for him to learn this new offense.
Yeah, I think this is there's so many. I'm sitting here thinking about all the different changes that could happen for this team on both sides of the ball. There might be a player that has a huge role on offense or defense. It's not even on the roster yet, Ryan.
Right.
You get a couple weeks out and we get to June, you get some of that Trey White money. Joshua Richardson absolutely aggressively joining the Shout Insider text line, which is a perfect time, Joshua,
Yes.
because I want to send at least a minimum of 4 more videos from OTAs today to the insiders. Jay Schroeder, one of our regulars, telling everybody that it's totally worth signing up. I want to get into I want to get into a wide receiver conversation in a minute. I know we're spending a lot of time on the wide receivers, but we're going to spend a lot of time on the wide receivers.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of complaints, Matt, that we're spending a lot of time on the wide receivers. That seems to be a popular topic.
That's true. Before we get there, though, one kind of scary play in practice today. Khalil Shakir over the middle, an overzealous Taylor Rapp comes down, and at first, I thought they just kind of collided, and it was a guy going to try to make a play on the ball, and then they just hit. Shakir was down for about 30 seconds or so. A little bit of concern initially. He pops up, he walks it off, seemed to be okay throughout practice and after practice. But Taylor Rapp, that's one of the things, somebody mentioned on social media, or maybe in the insider text, because I didn't put it out on social media, that this was something that kind of Taylor Rapp was known for coming to the Bills, was somebody that just plays downhill, aggressive, almost to a detriment at times. We saw him get his bell rung in a game last season. How concerned is that? Because concerning is that? Because not only from a practice setting where you don't want to be hurting guys, but in a game setting, the way that he plays, you like it, but at the same time, if he's out, there's a lot of uncertainty at the safety position then all of a sudden.
Availability is so important for the Bills this year at safety, especially with Jordan Poyer in Miami. Micah Hyde, not sure if he's going to play or not. You need the guys that are currently on your roster to stay healthy. And the way that he plays, it's a big concern, Matt. It's troublesome. It's worrisome. Now, in this instance, was he probably trying to make a break on the ball and make a play, and he just collided with the teammate? Yes, but you can't have that happen again when they're not in pads. It's something where hopefully he learns from it, learns that it's great to try to make a play in these practice settings, but it's more important to make sure that you're not injuring teammates or hurting yourself or putting yourself in a position where something bad can happen before they've even suited up for any kind of meaningful reps.
One rep of note on the offensive line. I didn't watch a ton of line play today, but I did want to shout out Greg Rousseau, who, you could take this one of two ways. You could be a little bit concerned because Ryan Vandermark got absolutely blown up on the play, and Greg Rousseau is just way too much for him. Or you could take it as, okay, it's one bad rep, no pads, right? And Ryan Vandermark's going to have a chance to, at least for the foreseeable future here until Spencer Brown is back, to get really valuable reps. He'll get them. You'll have Lyle Collins, who's out there. You'll have Tylen Grable. I don't know how much he can kind of ascend as we move towards training camp, but it's a nice position to be in, to have Vandermark getting valuable reps against Greg Rousseau here early in OTAs. Lose as much as you can now, because these are the kinds of moments that you can build on. And Greg Rousseau is, contract year. You see that he's locked in. He's ready to go. He looks good. He feels healthy. So I'm not taking that as a type of situation. I'm like, all right, good on good. I'm going to be watching out for as we move through the spring here, and then definitely when the summer starts. What do the Bills have in Ryan Vandermark? Is he ready to take that next step, really secure that swing tackle spot? And it'll be interesting to see, where is he lining up? How does he look at right tackle versus left tackle? All of these kind of questions.
Yeah, lose and learn. Now is the time to do that. And when you're not in pads, I would almost expect that to be the advantage of an edge rusher, especially a Greg Rousseau who is healthy. We talked about what he was dealing with last season and how that probably hampered him. you would hope that a former first-round pick would be able to win against, a guy that they were able to get off of, claim off of waivers a few years ago from the Colts. I'm very high in Ryan Vandemark. I was last season. I still am. I have him kind of slotted in as that swing tackle right now for the Bills behind the starters at left and right tackle. I think that he still has not scratched the surface on the type of player he is. But like you said, lose now, learn from it. So whatever move that Greg Rousseau used, kind of store that up in your head and say, okay, if he tries this again, here's how I'm going to counter it. Here's what I can do. That's what you want in any young player, is to learn from these mistakes. Just like Keon Coleman running the wrong route, learn from it. Put it in the bank. Say, next time this is called, I'm going to run the right route. I'm going to get open. I'm going to be able to learn from these experiences.
I was just looking at some of the insider texts, which, by the way, shout out to the insiders. Huge influx of insiders over the last couple of weeks. You can be next. Yeah. Just try it. It's free. 2 weeks. 716-528-6727. I put out a video of Javon Solomon just during individual portion. But it's like, dude, did you watch the video?
I did. You see the bend, you see the speed, you see the movement, you understand why the Bills liked getting him where they ended up getting him. And again, you have to kind of reel it in a little bit. We've said this 100 times, probably already on the show, not in pads, right, but you see it. You see what could be. Can he get the proper coaching and get coached up? Can he be someone as a rookie where they can count on him on obvious pass rush situations? Third and long, bring him in, let him use that athleticism and speed, get around the edge, get after the quarterback. I think that's where he can win as a rookie, as you try to coach him up in other areas, the run defense, staying at home, things like that. But yeah, that's a great video. And, shout out to Brett Triplett too. He was out at our show at Wingnuts, Matt, and he was another one of the new insiders. And he sent me a message today saying insider subtext is awesome. Regretful I didn't have it during draft season. Draft season was a great time to have it, but I would argue that maybe the best time to have it in season is training camp, because you're going to get a ton from both of us over those next few weeks.
You will be the coolest guy on weekend get-togethers, parties with the friends, group text with the buddies. Like, we are going to give insight, unparalleled insight from training camp, OTAs, minicamp, all of it. We just take it to the next level on the insider text line. So it's worth checking out. And again, at $50 for the year, I know money's tight. Like, these subscriptions add up. You get tired of it. Like, I don't even have Netflix right now because I feel like I look at the list of subscriptions that I have and I'm just like, I can't even, like, when I have to get it now, the NFL's playing on Christmas.
Right.
But there's all these subscriptions, but we try to keep the price super low, $3.99 a month, $50 a year, less than $50 a year. We think it's a really good investment, and just having access to us. 365. You got a Bills question? Fire it along. And at training camp preseason, you are going to be a very informed Bills fan. Check out this video, and shout out to one of our insiders who said, it's from Deborah, who says, when you tell us to look at someone in one of these videos that you send, it would help if you remind us what their number is. Some of us older folks may not have the roster numbers memorized, LOL. 56 for Javon Solomon. If you're watching, Deborah, I will send that along in the insider text line, having a little fun there. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Not a lot of takeaways from the secondary today.
Can I cut in real quick, though?
Go ahead.
Good comment from Taron Johnson in terms of how impressed he is with Cole Bishop. Talked about the size of Bishop and saying that despite being at that size, he moves like I do in terms of the fluidity, in terms of the speed. That's a positive. Getting that from Taron Johnson, arguably the MVP of this defense, this early, getting those great first impressions on a guy that you could end up playing next to on this defense or in the secondary with for the next 4 or 5 years.
No, I like that comment a lot. And it's like the other ones, like other positions, it's hard to really, unless somebody makes an interception or a pass breakup, it's like they might do their job perfectly on a rep, but you don't see it. The ball doesn't go that way. Like there's so much that goes into it. Rasul Douglas not being there, obviously a huge opportunity for guys like Kyer Elam, Jamarcus Ingram, guys that are trying to, show the Bills that they don't have to be aggressive at adding a veteran. And I do still think that they're going to be, but I think the stuff that those kind of guys do this time of year goes a long way in terms of the powers that be being comfortable at a position. I'm going to put out a video actually of Cole Bishop in a few minutes. Nothing crazy, but just your first look at him in the number 24 jersey, which by the way, it's 24, not to be confused with Kyer Elam, who's now wearing number 5. Numbers are crazy. Taylor Rapp's now in 9. It's just like, it's wild times out there, Ryan.
Yeah, hard to keep up on it all. Real quick, because we talked about Javon Solomon. How about a little love for Casey Toohill? I heard
I do
you
have to
mentioned that.
I do have to toot the horn for Casey Toohill actually, because I've been a little bit down on the signing. But I will say he looked explosive today. Like, I think the athletic profile, watching him in person on the practice field, you see a little bit of it. And if he could carve out a niche for himself on special teams, I think he puts a lot of pressure on a guy like Kingsley Jonathan, on a guy like Dwayne Smoot, who didn't jump out to me today to me, but Smoot's going to be a guy I'm watching very closely this summer. To me, he's in direct competition with Casey Toohill, who comes up, makes a nice play. Didn't have a sack or anything, but I thought he was around the quarterback on a play that should have been ruled a sack. And let me bring up, I just wrote down that he looked, look, it should have been a sack. I had somebody else down as a close sack. Going through the notes, nothing's popping out at me. That's another thing. I almost feel like in these practice settings, they don't blow the whistle enough to give credit to the guys that are rushing.
Right.
And I think it's because they want to run through the play and they want to give the quarterback the opportunity to throw the ball, the receiver, because if you're getting blown up play after play, it like limits the amount of times. Like, everybody's trying to kind of get through their work, and this time is super important. DWS, is Smoot healthy yet? He's got to be, right. Like, I mean, this is now well over a year since the Achilles. He suffered that in 2022. Played last season, had a bit of a down year. Chris Moore asked about Von Miller. Didn't do much today. Looked fine. Didn't do much. Don't have any huge observations on him.
Yeah. And some of these older guys, especially Von Miller, who's been here, you're not going to probably see him trying to set the world on fire, so to speak, in these settings. He's going to save it for when it matters a little bit more, training camp, preseason, if he gets out there on the field. But Smoot, like you said, he is going to be someone that needs to make plays because of all the competition and depth at the edge position.
Let's pop back over to the offensive side of the ball. I want to get into that wide receiver conversation. We'll close the show with that. So if you're watching, almost 2,500 people live right now on this beautiful Tuesday evening, stick around for that. Hit that like button on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel as well. We're about 15 away from 11K. Let's go. Let's get those numbers up. Running back room. James Cook. Drop. Force drop by Taron Johnson. This is something that I was talking to Elena from ESPN on the sideline as we were watching. It's like, this is something that's going to pop up if it happens in game in the season. I mean, they bring in a guy like Ray Davis, who similar profile, maybe not as athletic, a little bit more known for in between the tackles, but in the passing game, I think he offers something that if you're not getting what you need from James Cook in that department, you can kind of shift things over to Ray Davis maybe and give him a little bit more in terms of a bite of the apple in that part of the game. Ty Johnson, Ryan, and this might be an outlandish take, but I think he's running back 2 with, how do I say this without like being hyperbolic? A share of RB1 potential. And let me explain what I mean here. So I think that the way we saw it boil down last season, once Ty Johnson kind of lapped Latavius Murray and Leonard Fournette caused the Bills to just move on from him, we saw like a 1A or like a 1 and a 2 definitively, right? I never would have put Ty in the same bucket. But like I mentioned with the drops, like Ty Johnson could do a little bit of everything. And as a runner at times, I almost feel like his running style, I don't want to say he's better than Cook, but he's more urgent than Cook as a runner. And I think that there's value to that. And a team that's going to want to run the ball a little bit more when Ty Johnson's in the game, when he's going to get downhill really quickly, I'm game planning for that. Now, James Cook with the ball in his hands, he's much more difficult to handle. Like, I think his upside is much higher than Ty Johnson's, but the dropsies are a serious problem that I don't think could creep back in this year.
No, you have to definitely kind of reel those in. He had multiple drop touchdowns in games last year with the drops. Picture perfect throws from Josh Allen that just kind of bounced off the hands at inopportune times. So James Cook absolutely needs to be better in that regard. He has been training hard, working hard. He's coming off of a season where he was in the top 10 in the total yards between rushing and receiving. So it's not like he had a bad year by any means. But it's just those, like you said, the drops. He needs to clean those up because when he has his number called upon, which will probably be even more this year as a pass catcher, he needs to be relied upon to catch that ball. Ty Johnson, good hands, urgent runner, good between the tackles, showed some juice going around the outside last year. Can play special teams. He can do a little bit of everything. Ray Davis, they bring him in as well. They have a pretty solid running back room. That's not even mentioning Frank Gore Jr., who I think knows that if he wants any chance of sticking on this roster, special teams will have to come into play. They're pretty well set there, and I like that room a lot. It might not be in any top 10 rankings across the league, but that is a solid room with a lot of talent and a lot of versatility.
Comment in here about, I think it comes from Matt Lockey, Ty Johnson, LOL, we want to win a Super Bowl. No, I'd push back a little bit there, Matt. It's like, if anything, like the teams that traditionally go to the Super Bowl, win Super Bowls, don't have elite running backs. Like think of the top 5 or 10 running backs in the league year to year. Those teams aren't usually around in the Final Four, right? Like, I mean, you can make the argument for San Francisco, of course, like Christian McCaffrey, top running back, base their offense around him. I get all that, but I don't think that you need an elite running back to win a Super Bowl. Sure, Christian McCaffrey is one example. Like it's one example of, you go back the last couple of years, how many examples are there of teams that didn't have one? Who was Tampa Bay's running back a couple of years ago? Leonard Fournette, right? Like career journeyman before that.
And mind you, we're also talking about running back 2 with Ty Johnson at this point. We're not talking about running back 1. And,
I think he was making the comment with talking about like running back 1 upside. Like I'm giving a little bit of a hot take. I do think that there's more untapped potential with Ty Johnson than people really understand. I think he's a really good player when he was healthy, when he was given an opportunity last year. I thought he ran well. And I'm just saying, if the drops continue to be a problem, we know what Sean McDermott has done in the past with now an established player in James Cook. He's no longer year 2 James Cook, year 1 James Cook. Couple of drops, and all of a sudden, that share might be a little bit more equal.
I got you. So yeah, I was talking more so about like the overall room of Kansas City, for instance, where Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a former first-round pick, was their number 2 back last year behind Isaiah Pacheco, finished with only like 223 yards. So you don't need these explosive guys in that secondary role, but I get what you were saying, what he was saying now about the running back 1. I liked a lot of what Ty Johnson did last year, though, and like you said, if the Bills are going to win a Super Bowl, it's not going to be with the running back room. It's going to be with Josh Allen.
Okay, let's get into this wide receiver conversation. Too much hot takes on the running backs for a May evening. So the wide receiver position battle, Ryan, is going to be insane, dude. Like, I can't believe how hard this thing is going to be for them to figure this all out because, earlier comment in the show was like, I could see Marquez Valdes-Scantling not even making the roster. And at first you see that, his established place in Kansas City the last couple of years, late addition here, the Bills not having a ton in that room, you would think from the outside looking in. But if we get to a point where Valdes-Scantling doesn't make the roster, is that going to be absolutely stunning when you look around at what they have? Justin Shorter made 2 plays today that if he somehow finds a way to funnel that and flash that with Josh Allen in any type of game situation in preseason or regular season or otherwise, I think he's going to be a part of the mix. And then after that, it's like Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Mac Hollins. Oh, by the way, mark him in Sharpie, dude. Mark him in Sharpie. He's making this roster. He plays teams. He blocks. They like him down the field. He's an athlete. He's the juice guy. Dude, I could hear Mac Hollins on the practice field today more than I could hear anybody else in that whole facility. Like, Gene and Danger asked me, like, who's bringing the juice now that Diggs is gone? Mac Hollins is bringing the juice. Trust that. So I think that they're going to like him for that role. You got Claypool in the mix, MVS, Shorter, Shavers, who look pretty good today. Not a lot of action for him in team drills, but he just looks the part. I get why Bean's excited about him. And oh, by the way, I didn't even mention Khalil Shakir, who's their one returning guy and the tight ends.
And there's depth guys, Hamler and the speed, and there's so many different variations of this offense. There's size guys, there's speed guys, there's young guys entering year 2, like the Justin Shorter, like the Tyrell Shavers, rookies like Keon Coleman, UDFAs, free agents that are kind of brought in here late in the process. There's such a mix that this reminds me of what Brandon Beane has done in years past, again, at O-line, D-line. Bring in as many guys, as many skill sets as possible, see who sticks, see who fits best in this offense, see who stands out the most at training camp and in the preseason and locks up a spot on this roster.
KJ Hamler, Retro CNY, mentioning in the comments, had a drop today, Ryan. Don't want to overreact too much, but definitely worth mentioning is these guys try to make a little bit of name for themselves. Who is a returning player to the Bills offense, a wide receiver that had a catch from last season? How many players are there?
How many wide receivers? Obviously Shakir.
Is there any more, or is that it?
Off the top of my head, I might say that's it. Isabella was active.
Isabella.
Oh, okay.
He had one catch in a game.
Okay. That was the only one I could think of.
Yeah. So there you have it. Your 2 returning players, they do the same exact thing. Justin Shorter never got action in an actual game last season. Did have a couple preseason catches and a preseason touchdown, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think the final preseason game he kind of came on strong, or maybe it was the second one, but he had a nice preseason performance. And like you said, if he makes a few catches here and there in these practice settings, carries that over to training camp, where training camp I thought he ebbed and flowed a little bit. Started kind of poorly as a rookie, came on strong at the end of training camp. That can bode well for him if he just starts and is consistent throughout this summer.
Final thought, based on the interest of the Hive, I am dubbing this summer the summer of Shorter. We were talking a lot about Justin Shorter this summer, and he looks ready to go. I'm excited to talk to him at some point over the next couple of weeks. Get an idea, get a gauge of where he's at, what he did this offseason, and kind of plot out like what his plans are. Because there's an opportunity here, and obviously somebody that I think definitely factors into their thinking, knowing that they selected him in the 5th round last year and didn't get a chance to see him in a regular season game.
Yeah, they're going to give him every opportunity to win one of these jobs, whether it's 6 receivers, 7 receivers, however many they end up carrying. They drafted him because they thought he could play on special teams as well. But coming in and contributing as a wide receiver is almost a must for Justin Shorter this summer.
Tough part for him now, too, is everybody plays special teams, dude.
Yep.
Like, everywhere you look, guys have that flex in that room, and it's almost like Bills, right? Like position flexibility to the absolute nines. All right, Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. We may be back this week. I'm not so sure yet on our schedule, but if we're not, we will be right back here next Tuesday afternoon, bringing you all the insights. If you have any questions, the best way to get at us, Insider text line, 716-528-6727. Send a text, sign up, 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.